This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are already a month and some change into the NBA season. Remarkable things happening. Everybody knows that the Golden State Warriors is just wrecking shop all across. I mean, it's the Warriors tour, basically. Every city that they go, they basically are the show. And we'll have to wait until Christmas before we may even see a team actually dethrone them. It'll probably have to be the team that they wound up playing against in the NBA Finals. But up until then, we got to make sure we keep you in tune on which other teams might possibly have the goods to knock off the best team in the NBA thus far. And in order to be able to do that, you know I got to do it with my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, Diamond contributor, writer for one of the illest websites, www.shawsports.net. The Big Kahuna and my PNC, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Did you watch the Warriors game the other night?
Yeah, I did actually. Covering it at my other job, or one of my many jobs, and they said they've come close. You come close to beating them, but you haven't been able to knock off the King just yet. They always seem to find a way to win. Playing amazing basketball, as everybody knows right now. Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond, everybody. No matter who they put out there, they all produce. But those three guys primarily have been fueling this run, and we'll see how far they can take it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was watching the game against the Toronto Raptors. Again, this is a Toronto Raptors team. There's nothing completely special about them. Are they a markedly better team than where they were last year? Probably with DeMar Carroll, but I mean, they are who they are. I just think that what happens when you play a Steph Curry playing at the level that he plays, that he forces guys like Kyle Lowry, who seem to be the kind of guys that fly under the radar, to play marketably better. And we saw what could potentially be a great matchup, down the road, if the Toronto Raptors were ever to get to the NBA Finals, Kyle Lowry coming out there playing the kind of game that he played to even give the Toronto Raptors an opportunity to beat the Warriors. And the incentive is to knock off the Warriors. I mean, clearly they do not want this Warriors run to continue. And I said it, as part of my Cowspiracy theory, that I think an Eastern Conference team is going to be the one that's going to knock them off first, to finally put that crooked letter on the loss column for them. But when you look at this team, man, clearly they're just clicking on all cylinders. And when you have it with arguably one of the best players in the game now, we can actually say that with what Steph Curry is doing, it makes it very difficult for any team to just walk in there and just only play good enough basketball and wait for the Warriors to falter. They got to bring their A++ game to play this Warriors team, who just clearly know what they're doing right now.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's just they figure out a way all the time to get it done. And you may have them on the road for a little bit, but it's just one of those things. Even in that Raptors game, the Raptors played them tough twice. So for the season, Toronto could have easily won both of those games, but they just find a way, and either they force a late turnover, or the other team just has a mental lapse of some sort, or whatever the case may be. And this is what I said early on. And, again, it was a knock, that thing that Doc Rivers said to begin the year, that you need to have some luck. But the Warriors, as well as being supremely skilled and extremely disciplined, they've had a lot of luck in some of these things too. Even some teams, they play with the guys maybe being injured, but even just teams making some of these mental mistakes that they do at the end of games versus them, as they get caught up in the hype of trying to knock them off. Golden State definitely knows what they're doing out here, and said Luke Walton, man, he's going to be the best coach without actual wins on his actual record, as he was NBA Coach of the Week, Coach of the Month for last season, and this last month in November.
Yeah, that's going to be an argument again that we'll have for another time frame. Is where we stand about that. We talked about a few shows ago, but we have an excellent show for you guys this week, probably talking about a team who may actually have the goods to possibly knock off this Warriors team when the time presents itself. We got our man John Denton, who'll be hopping on with us a little bit in a few moments to help us discuss about this Orlando Magic team. Are they ahead of schedule? So we can't wait to bring them on to help us talk about them. We'll also talk about in our segment of the drop, the Phoenix Suns. I mean, clearly a team that, they're Jekyll and Hyde right now. And part of that is really the whole situation regarding Markieff Morris. And We're just wondering, should Markieff and the Phoenix Suns part ways? We can't wait to discuss that. And then we'll also have our coveted coast to coast where we cover the topics and stuff happening along in the association. So great stuff happening all around. Once again, we appreciate everyone continually listening to the Baseline. You know how to get on my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. We always encourage you, though, to get at the show's Twitter handle at NBA_the Baseline. Hashtag up the Baseline. Let us know who you are and what you're about. Available on all the major platforms, available on Stitcher Radio, available on iTunes, Player FM, or Microsoft TuneIn. So we always encourage you to download any one of those platforms and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things NBA. You know how we do, and you know how we like to start the show off. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
I break it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And this week, we have a really great guest along with us. He is a premier writer for OrlandoMagic.com. He writes some really great stuff covering the Orlando Magic, a team which Shaw and I have talked about. And at the outset of the season, we probably weren't expecting the kind of progressiveness that they have made so far, the early outset of the season. We have our man John Denton joining us this week. John, thanks for joining us here on the Baseline.
My pleasure being here, guys. Thanks.
John, did you in your outright, when you were watching this team take form over the course of the summer, were you expecting the kind of the progressiveness that this team has shown already at the beginning of this season with the play of Peyton, with the play of Oladipo, and even with Scott Skiles, who, this is his second go around with this Orlando Magic team, and I know a lot of people question chemistry, the way that he coaches a team. Were you expecting all of this to come together so soon with the great play that this team has shown thus far this season?
Well, Scott made it clear right off the bat that, things were going to be different, that, this team was expected to make a growth. No longer would it be accepted to play well and lose. He's all about winning games. It's no longer about developing players. It's about trying to win games. And, I think you see this young bunch under Skiles' mentorship. You see them kind of growing up. You see them being held accountable. And you see the individual strides. You see how Elfrid Payton's better than he was last year. You see how, Victor Oladipo has kind of taken a step. Nick Vucevic is solid inside, and Tobias Harris is better. So they have this collection of young and dynamic talent, and here all at once it's kind of grown up together, and it's proven in the win column.
So when you talk about some of the improvements that they made, I think the biggest thing that I've seen for them is the effort and the actual results on the defensive side of the basketball. And Skiles is known for being a guy who's a disciplinarian and can get guys to play defense. But even this right now, they're 8th in terms of defensive rating right now in the NBA. Did you expect that big of a leap so soon from this young group?
Well, you knew it was going to be difficult. I mean, last season this team was 25th in the league in defensive rating. They were 28th in the league in field goal percentage allowed. And Scott, to give him credit, Scott laid the numbers out to this bunch. He said the one stat where you can predict playoff teams over the last 20 years is defensive field goal percentage. And over the last 20 years, the top 5 teams in the league, that's 100 teams, 94 of them have gone on to make the playoffs. So he told them, if you want to make the playoffs, if you'll finish in that top 5 in defensive field goal percentage allowed, you've got a 94% chance of making it. And, you look up here now at the quarter pole mark of the season, and the Magic ranked 4th. They're holding teams to 42.2%. That's a dramatic difference than last season when they were 28th and had trouble stopping anybody. So they've made the commitment to that end of the floor, and it's paying off for them.
John Denton joining us here. You can catch him on Twitter at John Denton555. John, a thing that I've also seen, and I know you guys are actually touching on the defensive side of the ball, to me, what's really impressed me about this Magic team this year is their offensive efficiency. This was a team that I think over the last couple of seasons really struggled to find an identity of how they want to go about scoring the basketball. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen as far as Scott Skiles and his versatility in coaching to allow this team to show a little bit more balance, but show more efficiency with scoring the ball? They're scoring 101.6 points per game, which to me is very impressive for a very young team, which we're still trying to figure out who is the key man, who is the go-to guy that's going to be kind of the future of the franchise for this Magic team.
Well, Scott Skiles took a look at the roster, and he said, this is not Cleveland. This is not, Golden State. This is not a team that has one superstar who you can just give the ball to and clear out and let him, go make a play. They don't have that player. But what they do have is 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. They have young guys with lots of energy, lots of athleticism. So Scott wants to play it. It's almost like a European style. And, I think part of the reason Evan Fournier has blossomed early in the season is because they're playing that European style of passing and cutting. You don't dribble the ball. You either shoot it or you pass it, and you move it on to the next guy. And, that's how we've seen the balance. They had a game against Philadelphia where they had 7 players in double figures. They've had 6 games this year where they had 6 guys in double figures. The other night in Utah, the Magic came back and won by getting 6 guys scoring double figures. So, it's never going to be a system set up where Victor Oladipo gets 25 shots. It's just never going to be the case. But, they want Vucevic to pound the ball inside. They want Tobias to play better at 3. He plays better at 3 than 4. And, Channing Frye gives them a stretch 4. And Andrew Nicholson's been a pleasant surprise kind of coming back from, resurrecting his career, being a stretch 4 for this team. So on any given night, they have 6, 7 guys who can put 14 to 18 points on you, but they're never going to have a guy who's going to give you 30.
So in that same mode, that's something that I was a little bit surprised about to start the year, and you touched on a little bit with Evan Fournier. He's a guy who played very well at some point last year as well too, then kind of fell out of the rotation a little bit, I think, after Oladipo came back from some of his injuries. But I surely didn't see Fournier being a starting player for this team coming into this season. Yeah, he should maybe have had a role, but I think maybe the injury to Aaron Gordon played a lot into that. But talk to us a little bit about how Fournier has been so dynamic and instrumental to them in early going, even though he's dropped off a little bit in some of his play now.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think Scal's system has helped him out as far as because he moves really well without the ball. He's the team's best spot-up shooter, and not many people throughout the league realize it, but Evan is a fantastic finisher. He's 6'7", so when he gets to the rim, he'll dunk the ball. He can finish in traffic. He's tough. So that's helped him, the fact that, he can mix in the 3 and then he can go by you when they run at him and finish at the rim. He played with his national team with French, the national team, the last 2 years. They won 3rd in the World Cup in Brazil. And then they finished 3rd this past year. He really feels like they have the 2nd best team in the world. They had a bad loss to Spain over in the Eurobasket, but that kind of hardened him, playing in that kind of pressure, playing for your country. That got him ready for the past 2 seasons, and he's had great starts the past 2 years. Now he kind of has to prove that he can coexist with Victor Oladipo. Victor's coming off the bench, but he's getting more and more touches now. So Evan has to prove that he can kind of coexist with Victor.
John Denton joining us here, premier writer for OrlandoMagic.com. Go to www.orlandomagic.com to get the inside information on the Orlando Magic and what they're doing. The Orlando Magic, and John, you're on the road as we're having this interview with you, and you're watching this team compete against arguably what's going to probably be one of the top teams in the Western Conference, like a team like the Los Angeles Clippers. What's really impressed me about this Magic team, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is the competitive nature this team shows. Clearly, this team has fight in them. And when you look up and down at their wins and losses, it's not a question of getting blown out. It's really a question of mere buckets that's probably determining whether or not this Magic team can win or lose. Can you talk a little bit about what you see from this team as far as what's going to be necessary for them to get over the proverbial hump, so to speak, to turn a lot of those losses into wins for them?
Yeah, guys, I mean, they've been in every game, and not to name drop, but I know Doc Rivers really well from his days in Orlando. He coached for the Magic from 99 to 03, and still considered him a really good friend. And he came up to me after his pregame thing yesterday, and he said, "Holy cow, the Magic are in every single game." He went back and watched the tape, and he said, everybody's talking about how the Magic have recently won 5 in a row. He said they should have started the season 5-0. They were up 8 on Washington in the first game of the year and lost it. They were up 18, up 15 in the fourth quarter on OKC and lost that game in double overtime. Magic are 4-5 in games decided by 5 points or less. They're 3-3 in games decided by 3 points or less. So, you turn around those games, and like Doc said, he said the Magic could very well have one of the best records in the Eastern Conference right now if they could get over the hump. And that kind of bit them again last night. You're up 10 on the Clippers. No Chris Paul, no JJ Redick. You got to win that game. And, the Magic really let it slip away. Jamal Crawford, I've watched him for 10 years now. He is the ultimate Magic killer. He beats the Magic every single time, and sure enough, he had 32 points last night. So, the Magic just have to figure out a way to close out games. They kind of struggle when the defense turns up. So if they could find a way to close out these games, I really think that record could be even a lot better than it is now. Kind of like Doc said last night.
When you talk about closing out games, they brought some veteran guys on this roster. A guy like C.J. Watson, I know, was injured and things like that. But is he someone who can maybe help this roster towards the end of games like that? Now, even in terms of decision making and the pace and things like that, can he play that type of role for the Orlando Magic closing down the stretch?
Yeah, losing C.J. was a big blow. Magic were excited about getting him. C.J.'s not a guy who's name's going to move the meter. Jason Smith's not a guy who's a big sexy name, but when they signed C.J. Watson and Jason Smith this summer, they really liked those signings. And Jason's been really good for the Magic. And early in the season, those first 8 games, C.J. Watson was the number one player on the team in plus minus. Whenever he went into the game, he always made something good happen. Had a calming effect on the team. They're hoping that CJ can come back real soon. He had a cortisone shot in his knee the other day. He's had some calf problems, but if they can get him back on the floor, he can be that steady and influence, down the stretching games.
John Denton joining us here. Be sure to check him on Twitter at John Denton 555. John, we're talking about role players, and it's interesting. A couple of seasons ago, the Orlando Magic go ahead, and I guess you can kind of say their big free agent signing, so to speak, was Channing Frye. And look, that, like you said, you think of a name like Channing Frye, he made his bones doing what he did for the Phoenix Suns. But for the Orlando Magic, I really haven't seen that productivity that I'm sure Hannigan and company was what they signed him for. And even like over the course of this season, he has virtually been non-existent. Has Scott Skiles fallen out of love with Channing Frye, and is basically jeopardizing Channing Frye's ability to really not only see minutes, but also see the ball consistently to shoot? Because when I'm looking at the stat sheets, man, I think he shot the ball like 3 times the other night against the Los Angeles Clippers. And this is the guy that's supposed to stretch the floor and shoot the 3. The ball's not even swinging his way right now.
Yeah. By his own admission, Channing will tell you, his word last season was embarrassing. He was embarrassed with the way he played last year. He was hurt early in training camp, and last year was a disaster. He couldn't stay on the floor because he couldn't defend, and he made shots, but he just didn't have that big of a role. This season, he started off on the bench. He was rarely used, but since they put him in the lineup, the Magic have taken off. Scott Skiles made the lineup changes 6 games ago. They win 5 in a row and lost last night. You have to understand what Channing Frye, and coaches talk about this all the time. It's not about the shots he makes. It's about the lanes he creates for others. Channing has such an effect on others just by being on the floor. And Brad Stevens from Boston was in Orlando the other night. And he said even though Channing Frye averages 7 points a game, he said coaches around the league fear him like he averages 30 a game, because he can rip off 3 straight threes in a row and you stay out on him. Well, when bigs have to follow him all the way to the 3-point line, that creates driving lanes for Oladipo. It creates driving lanes for Elfrid Payton. It keeps the other big man from doubling teaming Nick Vucevic inside. So his effect is what you see with others. You don't always see it in his numbers, but you see it in how they've won these last 5 games was with Victor and Elfrid getting to the rim. That doesn't happen without that other big being pulled out the 3-point line on Channing Frye.
So when you talk about Frye, I think of him always as a character guy, and then you talk about Victor Oladipo, I see him as a character guy as well. And you're around the team on a consistent and constant basis. You've seen it. You know these guys in and out. Was Victor at all, disappointed with the benching, if you will, to have to come off the bench, or did he see it as, listen, this is something where now I can really go here and work over some of these second unit guys, whatever, and still know that he's going to get his minutes? How did Victor take the kind of the removal from the starting lineup?
Well, Victor he's tried to hide it. He's tried to put on a good face, but he's not happy about it. We all know it. Victor, shows it with his expression on his face, but he's responded the right way. He's taken it and run with it, and his numbers have gone up dramatically. He was averaging 12.8 points a game. He was shooting 32% when he was a starter. He comes off the bench. He gets 24 points in his first game. He gets to the free throw line 15 times. He's averaging about 18 points a game now. He's getting more shots in less minutes. So does he want to be a starter? Of course he does. And Scott Skiles said, I would have been disappointed if he wasn't upset. And, Victor's had a little trouble, hiding his disappointment, but he's going about it the right way. I tell you guys a story the other night. I was going to dinner out in L.A. Here it is, 9 o'clock. It's a Friday night. You figure, all the guys are out partying or whatever. LaRon Profit, Victor Oladipo come into the hotel at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Victor's drenched in sweat. He's been shooting at a high school gym for the past 2 hours, getting up shots, getting ready for Saturday night's game. I mean, that's the kind of person and that's the kind of work ethic that Victor Oladipo has.
John Denton joining us here. And I mean, that is an awesome story and perspective, something that doesn't get normally talked about when we talk about first round draft picks and people who we kind of tout as the future, so to speak, of the franchise. But, Victor Oladipo is part of a piece to a major puzzle that this Orlando Magic team wants to be, again, the talk of the Eastern Conference. And clearly they're trying to trend in that direction. So let's look at it big picture, John. This team is 11-9 currently, as we're recording our podcast here. And they're sitting in a Southeast division where, there were some question marks as far as the competitive nature and play. We thought maybe the Atlanta Hawks would probably fall off. We weren't certain about the Charlotte Hornets. The Orlando Magic is a team that I don't think people expected was going to be as good as they are. And yet these teams have exceeded expectations. And we still have the Washington Wizards and the Miami Heat, who are the proverbial favorites. But when you look up and down the rosters for all of these teams, I mean, any one of them right now playing at the level that they're playing could easily be atop of this respective division. What is it going to take, in your opinion, to get this Orlando Magic team to hang tough, what seems to be now arguably one of the toughest divisions in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, this team's got to learn how to close out games late. I mean, instead of being 11-9, they could very easily be 15-5 right now. I mean, the way they've lost games late, like I said, up 15 to OKC, up 10 the other night to the Clippers. I mean, if they can find a way to close out those last 2 and 3 minutes of games, they can compete with the Miamis and the Washingtons and the Atlantas. And, everybody knows, and Scott Skiles knew at the beginning of the year, the East is a lot better this year. I mean, it's not the laughing stock that it's been the last few years. And, in the past, I guess it's the past 3 years, teams with 38 wins have made the 8th spot in the East. That's not going to be the case this year. You're going to have to win 41, 42 games to get that 8th spot. And, I think this Magic team has the toughness. They have the athleticism. Could they use one more veteran? Of course they could. If they can find a way to close out games down the stretch, I really think they're going to be right there in that mix for a playoff spot because, it's going to be jumbled. It's going to be jumbled with the Charlottes and the Indianas and the Bostons and, all those teams and the Magic. You can put them all in a hat. It's going to be really tight. And if this team can find a way to get over the hump late in games, I think they're going to be right there in the mix for a playoff spot.
Well, before we let you get out of here, I mean, those are some great thoughts, but my thing is I have to get my last 2-part question out here. You just mentioned something that really has intrigued me. Do you think this team would potentially make a move? And who are some of the pieces that could potentially get moved to maybe bring another veteran in here to kind of help this team? And secondly, my man Mario Hezonja, he seems to have fallen out of the rotation a little bit here. Is there any hope for Hezonja to get back in this thing and really be a contributor for this roster down the stretch?
Yeah, I'll touch on Mario first. I mean, the Magic love everything about this kid. I mean, he's going to be a great player in this league. And Skiles, even said the one hesitation he had in changing the rotation, moving Victor to the second unit, it's balanced the team out. It's made them a better team. But the one hesitation he had was the effect it's going to have on Mario. But to Mario's credit, he's taken it well. He's working every day. He went the other day for a conditioning session. He's doing boxing days off. He's practicing against coaches every day after practice. He's working really hard. And I'm telling you guys, that kid's going to average 20 points a game someday. He is loaded with confidence. He is loaded with game. He's going to be a player. It's just, he kind of has to bide his time right now. But I really think he's going to, at some point this season, he's going to be back in that rotation and help this team out. And, as far as going out and getting someone, Rob Hennigan's done a good job of acquiring assets. They're loaded with tons of assets, so they have pieces that they could move. If they would look to get somebody, I think it would be that physical veteran type, a power forward type that could really help this team defensively. But you got to like the pieces that they've put together. They've drafted well. They've drafted high character guys, and I really think this bunch is going to be in it all the way down to the end.
He is the man, and he is definitely working some great angles and articles covering the Orlando Magic. He is John Denton. Be sure to check him out. He's always on the Twitter, keeping us, podcasters and NBA analysts and mediaites in tune with what the Magic is doing. Catch him on Twitter at John Denton 555. But be sure to check out the articles that he writes at www.orlandomagic.com. John, we really appreciate you taking a few moments. We didn't want to take you away from you sundialing it out there in California and stuff. So we'll let you get back to you doing your thing, and we can't wait to get you back on in the future as you continue to cover the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys, so much. Anytime, I'd love to be on. So thanks for keep what you do and keep up the good work.
Awesome stuff. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, The Baseline NBA podcast. This week in The Drop, interesting topic. Shaw, you selected for us to delve in and chat about a little bit here. Phoenix Suns, interesting dilemma. And clearly it's regarding Markieff Morris. Markieff Morris has kind of, I guess you can say, formed a little bit of the soap opera drama over the course of this offseason with his demand for being traded. And when most guys usually do that, usually they make it tough on an organization in order for them to really take this into consideration. We remember this a few years ago with Carmelo Anthony, and I'm not trying to make a comparison of Carmelo Anthony's game with Markieff Morris's game. I mean, that's not even what we're trying to do here. But we do recall how Carmelo Anthony basically held the Denver Nuggets hostage with his constant tirades, or not tirades, but his constant, nudges to the media about how he wants to be moved, and basically forcing the New York Knicks and even using the Brooklyn Nets at that time to figure out a way to get him out of Denver. Ultimately, the trade happens, and the New York Knicks have had Carmelo Anthony and dealt with Carmelo Anthony since. The Phoenix Suns, however, in an interesting situation and dilemma. I don't know if whether or not they have too much to worry about, because when you look at what Markieff Morris has been doing for the Phoenix Suns, it virtually is absolutely nothing. And I just find it funny, Shaw, because for someone who's demanding to be sent out of here, who just finished signing a contract extension through 2019, he's not helping himself by not even helping this team win basketball games.
Well, your point, is really something that has been discussed on Twitter a lot. And even our guy from the Drive and Dish podcast, Tim Tompkins, who's a big Phoenix Suns fan, he's like, damn, I figured if nothing else, he'd come in here and play well so that we can boost his trade value. And it's been quite the contrary. So, I mean, I don't think he's been openly, saying things like that. He's just saying he's not playing well. But to begin the early part of the season, they were giving him touches. He had a sky high usage rate. He got the ball in places he could be successful. Just wasn't making shots. And listen, we're not going to go out here with any outlandish, proclamations and accusations saying he's throwing games or he's throwing his season or whatever the things may be. He's just not playing well, and I think that's just a result of him not wanting to be there. So whether he's even saying that right now, following the media session where he said, okay, all is quote unquote forgiven, if you will, from the summer, and he's a Phoenix Sun and he's happy to be there and he wants to continue to play there this season, his play is not translating to that. So something has to give, because right now it's a real problem, and the Phoenix Suns are starting to lose some games here a little bit now, getting behind the 8 ball. They lost another game as we record this podcast. So now I think they're 4 or 5 games under 500. And Markieff, he's battling a little bone, I think a bone bruise in his knee, but he didn't get in the rotation today. So John Lore has replaced him in the rotation, and that's a problem. So something has to happen with Markieff Morris and the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I mean, let me touch on a couple of points that you made, Shaw, with regards to Markieff Morris. And I love Markieff Morris. I love Markieff Morris's game. I love what he represented when he came out of the University of Kansas. He has a great story to tell with him and his twin brother, Marcus. And I get it. Family comes first. We all believe in that. Listen, we've seen the advertisements, Adidas, basketball is a brotherhood. When we featured Kevin Garnett on there. So I kind of get that aspect of things. But, part of this is The Phoenix Suns gave you an opportunity. They gave you a chance. They drafted you. And I think sometimes some of these players tend to forget that and they lose that. I understand that the game is a business, but it's one of the few sports that you play where you have a guaranteed contract. So you're kind of really under, you're under the influence of the basketball organization that you're playing for at this moment in time. You basically forced them to give you this contract extension. Now, understandably so, it wasn't right how they handled his twin brother, but you're a professional basketball player and you have to go out and you have to perform. Good or bad, whether you like plays, don't like plays, whether you like the team or don't like the team, you still represent that team, that organization that is just giving you $30-something million. So I don't get why now suddenly it behooves him to feel justified in saying, well, I don't want to play for this team anymore. It's time to move me. And let's not be naive in thinking by him saying it and then saying, well, all is good. No, all isn't good, because no matter what you say, no matter what you do, the stigma is still out there. The perception is still out there. And it's going to linger until something dramatically changes that. Normally, it's winning. And unfortunately, in an 82-game season, because there are peaks and valleys with this Phoenix Suns team, it's not just about winning a few basketball games where the team just looks good, because that's what the Phoenix Suns have been doing the last few years. It's them actually going out and doing something, either making it to the playoffs or winning an NBA title. Two things that are so far from their reach right now. And for Markieff Morris, it's the worst possible scenario, because you're not doing this at the end of your contract. You're doing this when you just re-signed.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, it's tough. But he's saying all the right things. Looking at a quote from Paul Curl from the Arizona Republic, and Morris was responding to something that his brother Marcus said. When Marcus said, "Look, my brother looks unhappy out there," Markieff was like, "Listen, he thinks he knows me. And yeah, we're brothers, but this is a situation that he's on the outside looking in, and really, I don't talk to him too much about what's going on here. I'm just not getting the job done. I'm all right. If you didn't hear it from me, that means I'm okay. I just need to be better. Nothing different. I'm good. That's the gist of what he's saying right now, or even recently. And yeah, again, playing the good soldier, if you will, but it's hard to argue with how he looks. From a body language standpoint and from even a production standpoint, shooting a career low 39% right now, and yeah, maybe just off to a bad start, but also shooting 28% from the 3-point line and down to 12.1 points per game, as opposed to the 15 he was averaging a season ago. It just looks a little awkward right now in Phoenix, and obviously, as you just mentioned too, losing isn't helping at all. But I think he is a big part of that right now, because he hasn't been the reliable source of points and even toughness and defense that they were looking for him to be this season.
Callie, Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast, are sitting into the drop, discussing Markieff Morris and the Phoenix Suns. Should they part ways? Shaw, let me throw this out at you, okay? I'm just looking at this on basketballreference.com. And basketballreference.com, for you guys who are not familiar with, a great website, not just to get statistics, but to also see a lot of the metrics that are normally being used right now by other media outlets to help really measure and gauge and engage in the discussions that we're normally having about players and teams and where they're trending to. Shaw, when I look at this, there's a metric that they use called similarity scores. Now, I'm not trying to say that Markieff Morris is going to be this guy. I'm not trying to say that he's going to trend in the direction of these type of players. But Shaw, when you look at Markieff Morris statistics, okay, over the last couple of seasons, his career right now is trending to that of someone like Chuck Hayes. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying that he's going to play like Chuck Hayes. I'm not saying that his career is going to end up like Chuck Hayes. But it's got to irk you if you are a first-round draft pick, okay, and you're Markieff Morris. You're part of a team that over the last couple of years have really, I think, have overachieved in some respects, right? And then obviously down the stretch, they fall back down to earth. You sign a contract extension, which I think on another team, he could probably be a much better player, a much better asset. He could easily at any moment in time be the cornerstone of this team. I get it. There's Bledsoe and there's Brandon Knight. But it wasn't like Markieff Morris had not had opportunities to really shine and set himself apart and kind of even make Ryan McDonough open his eyelids up a little bit more and say, we got to really figure out a way to get this guy to basketball, to really make him an important person, a part of this offense. Even convince Jeff Hornacek that he's an important asset to this team. Right now, Jeff Hornacek is looking good knowing that he's got Bledsoe, he's got Brandon Knight, and he's got Trevor Booker waiting in the horizons to come up and help this Phoenix Suns team. And Markieff Morris just seems to be one of those, all right, we'll keep him type of signings, over the next couple of years, or we'll figure out a way to move him if we actually feel like it. But under no circumstances are they pressed to do anything, because Markieff Morris is not showing you what Markieff Morris is truly capable of.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And they do have the luxury of kind of letting that situation play itself out as long as he doesn't become a distraction in the locker room. I mean, Mirza Telelovich is there as well. He can play that stretch forward position. They can slide PJ Tucker there if they need to. Obviously, TJ Warren is a guy who needs to get some minutes. Although he's not playing the forward position, you can put him out there and have him out there in some of the smaller lineups that they may use. As you mentioned, Devin Booker is a guy who they want to get some minutes for as well. But John Lure, like I said, has leapfrogged him in terms of as a starter currently, and it might be just because of the bone bruise in the knee, or it might be just a philosophy change that Coach Hornacek is like, listen, you know what, Lure is a better guy for us right now, and as again, they're not winning games either way, so something, like I said, something needs to give here. And whether that's they start to look to see what they can get from Morris, kind of maybe through some of those back channels, because right now, listen, his value is rock bottom. What are you going to get for this guy right now if you try to ship him out? It's like you almost need to play him, and hopefully somebody's willing to take a chance, and maybe he strings together maybe 3 to 5 good games. And you say, okay, look, he still has it. You know what I mean? And let's try to get him out of here now. But as you mentioned, they don't necessarily have to accommodate his situation right now, because they have so many guys that can play and maybe even deserve to play, because it seems like they definitely want to be there.
All right, just to follow up on that point, Shaw, with Jeff Hornacek, are you or should you be confident if after Markieff Morris heals from his bone bruise, should you feel confident about figuring out a way to insert him in the rotation, or do you rely more on what you've been doing thus far with Telelovich and with Lure, using them as your primary 4 guys right now? And I'm not saying you're trying to punish Markieff Morris. I'm just saying, up to this point, if Markieff Morris is not really showing you anything, is it absolutely necessary for Jeff Hornacek to figure out a way to insert him back into that rotation, given the fact that this team is going to have to thrive with what they have, and he really needs to see what these guys are capable of giving him on the basketball court?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound ignorant in any way, shape, or form. I just feel like, when a guy makes a certain level of money on your team and you expect him to play a role, you have to give him every opportunity to succeed, per se. So I think, maybe after he gets fully healthy, with this situation, maybe you give it another X amount stretch of games, if you will, and see what you can get from it. And if it doesn't work out, then we've seen stranger things happen. We saw Josh Smith get waived last year out of nowhere. So, I don't know if that's something that we want to be throwing out there right now regarding to Markieff and the Suns, but it's definitely something that, in terms of him having a guaranteed spot and role and minutes on this team, I don't know that that's going to be the case. So I think they'll probably give it one more shot. I don't know what that stretch of games is. Is it 5 games, 10 games, and you kind of see where he's at? Is he playing better? Does he seem more engaged or not? Or, after that time, do you decide, listen, we'll bench you and we'll figure it out in the offseason?
All right, 17 games this season. Markieff Morris has started 16 of them. No double-doubles so far this year. Last year in the 82-game season, 12 double-doubles. So, I mean, look, the productivity clearly is not there. And as you said before, Shaw, career lows in shooting percentage, career lows in three-point shooting percentage. His true shooting percentage is a career low. I mean, just across the board, he's just not having a great season at all. Hopefully he will get himself out of that funk and be part of that exciting basketball play that the Phoenix Suns are going to need in order to maintain in the Western Conference. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Tony Wroten made his debut for the Philadelphia 76ers. Long overdue for that Sixers backcourt, man. They got somebody out there that knows what to do on the basketball court, right?
Or so we think. Tony Roten is one of those guys who always seems to play at one speed, turns the ball over a lot. He looked real rusty in that first game back. Hopefully he gets it under control. But the 76ers point guard situation, something that we've been watching for a while now. Roten and Kendall Marshall will be coming back pretty soon for this team. So, Marshall will be back pretty soon, and hopefully they can kind of get this team to get some more W's under their belt.
All right. Mike Dunleavy, unfortunately, has set a setback, and clearly it could be a setback for the Chicago Bulls. But look, let's just keep it in its proper perspective. It looks like Fred Hoiberg has his finger on the pulse of this team, knows what he's doing. And so I think maybe they can afford to allow Mike Dunleavy the allotted time necessary for him to come back 100% healthy, right?
Well, things have worked out for them, with Hoiberg in that situation. Currently, as we record the show, the Bulls are actually first by percentage points in the Eastern Conference. So they seem to have things figured out. Rose, Butler, everything working in there. And they've gotten some great play from even Tony Snell and even, McDermott coming up the bench, who also interviewed, shameless plug, on Dime Magazine. So they have everything that they need right now. And when Dunleavy comes back, it'll be a nice little luxury for Hoiberg.
All right, in Detroit, Brandon Jennings himself also has a minor setback, and this time it's the process regarding his knee recovery. Sean, when you look at this situation, the Detroit Pistons have clearly been overachieving without Brandon Jennings. When he does come back, is this Pistons team expected to be better, or could he actually shake things up with what seems to be great chemistry for a great start for this team?
Well, we've been wondering that for a while. I saw myself openly have been wondering that, especially on Twitter. It's like, hey, will he come back and play the good soldier, if you will? If he does, yeah, that gives Van Gundy a nice weapon to come off the bench and somebody who can really kind of run that offense when Reggie Jackson sits or takes a rest, and they can even potentially play together at times. So I am looking for Jennings to work his way back slowly and potentially be an asset to this Pistons team, and hopefully can just run it easy.
Possible topic conversation in next coming weeks. Reggie Jackson, Brandon Jennings, who should be your part of that starting lineup for a Detroit Pistons team that is clearly in the midst of things right now in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Out in Sacramento, my man Shaw calls him WCS. We all like to still call him Willie Cauley-Stein. The rookie is now out for 4 to 6 weeks. Something happened with the finger, dislocated actually. So Shaw, when you look at what's happened now with Willie Cauley-Stein and his progression, how far does this set him back, and how far does this set the team back as far as the Kings play in the Western Conference?
Well, he was playing minutes, but not a lot of them per se. And Kosta Koufos was getting a lot of run at that 5 spot as well, or shifting Cousins back there, and sometimes playing small. Maybe bringing Gay to the 4, or even bringing Omri Caspian. So I think that's pretty much what they're going to do right now in interim time. But for Willie Cauley-Stein, or Trill as he likes to be called, this is a problem, and hopefully he can come back real soon, because he was starting to kind of figure things out, but maybe even playing a little bit, and now sitting and trying to watch the game, maybe that'll help him come back and be even a little bit more effective towards the end of the season.
All right, Sean. Finally, out in Cleveland, the word is Kyrie Irving is on the basketball court, and he has begun practicing. Probably no sooner for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. There was a story there was conversations already about the play of LeBron James and the amount of minutes he's already been logging the early outset of this season. If you're David Blatt, if you're the Cavaliers organization, how soon do you bring Kyrie Irving back to help offset the responsibilities that LeBron James have been shouldering for this Cavaliers team in the early outset of the season?
I think this is obviously what they've been wanting and hoping for and needing, to make that final run and that deep run that they hope for the NBA Finals. When Kyrie comes back, which should still probably be around Christmas time, which I can't imagine he comes back on Christmas Day, because you don't want to play the Warriors as your first game. You may want to get a couple games under your belt. So I'd expect them back sometime around the 20th or so of December. And if that works out, that they've already started to make some of those rotational moves for them, where they're bringing Mo Williams out off the bench so that he can get comfortable back in that role. Kyrie Irving is as vital to this team as anybody else on the roster. So hopefully he's back soon and healthy and doesn't have any setbacks in his recovery, and the Cleveland Cavaliers can be at full strength.
Yeah, man, it's going to be really interesting to see how Kyrie Irving asserts himself back into the rotation, so to speak, as far as the ball movement, his ability to score. It's going to clearly take some time. We just hope that, however he comes back, he's coming back 100%. And it's just a matter of nerves and just adjustment that have to be made for what he's capable of doing. Because clearly with him, Kevin Love, and LeBron James, that is absolutely the best possibility that they can have in winning a championship somewhere down the road. Awesome stuff, Shaw. And once again, as we run through the news that's happening in the association, and just an absolute fabulous show as we had our man John Denton jump on with us this week to help talk about a team that is currently on the rise. And it's funny, Shaw, a couple of years ago, or maybe even just last year, we weren't really too sure about the direction about this Orlando Magic team, but I think John Denton and everybody else that's out there that's supporting the Orlando Magic can probably think with a little bit more optimism about what this team is doing, especially with the kind of start that they've had this season.
Absolutely. This is a team that has a lot of things going for them positively in terms of youth and in terms of coaching. We were a little concerned about Scott Skiles, being that guy, but he seems to have figured some things out, especially with the move putting Oladipo on the bench for the interim term right now. And as long as that continues to work, we'll have nothing but positive things to say about what's going on in O-Town.
Yeah, definitely. So once again, we'd like to thank our man John Denton for hopping on board with us this week. And we also like to thank you and yours, the listeners and fans of The Baseline. We appreciate everyone continually showing the love and support. And we cannot wait to bring you the butter goods discussing about the hot button topics happening in the NBA. For The Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. And we'll catch up with you next time.